Hi, it's Penny here, and today we're going to be talking about the 10 books that I read in January. As usual, I am going to do this book battle style, which means I pair up all the books and I battle them against each other until we come up with the best book of the month. So I'm going to start with the fantasy and then move on to the non-fantasy books. I will leave timestamps down below if you want to jump to a particular book and hear my thoughts about it. Otherwise, let's get into the battles. Our first battle is going to be a couple of books that have to do with death and hell. So we've got The Many Lives of Laila Starr by Roanhorse and Filipe Andrade up against Sign Here by Claudia Lux. So firstly, The Many Lives of Laila Starr is a graphic novel / comic that I got from the library. I think I heard Book Rose say that it was really good, and it was really good. So this is inspired by Indian mythology. We're basically following Death, who has been fired and sent down to Earth because a baby has been born that's going to invent immortality. And it's just about her trying to kill this boy, but also through their meetings they kind of learn a lot about life and death. And I thought this was absolutely beautiful. I wasn't expecting it to be as beautiful as it was. I really liked the color palette of the art, although at times it wasn't quite as strong as I would like, although I especially like the alternate covers that are included. But I think what actually stood out for me with this is the writing. Quite often with comic book writing, it's fairly basic. Whereas this, there were parts where the writing was actually beautiful, and I really appreciated that. Also, a lot of comic book type stories like this are long-running series, but this is all wrapped up within this, and like you wouldn't want any more because it's just such a complete story already. So, I love that. Then we've got Sign Here by Claudia Lux. This is a story about a man who works in hell. He works in the department where they try to get people to sign their souls away. So we're following his story as he tries to get another member of this family to sign their soul away, because if he gets like a full set, he'll be able to get a certain kind of promotion. But we're also following this family's story as they go away on holiday, and some things start to unravel about a death that happened at a party when the parents were young. To be honest, the stories weren't actually very connected, and there was also a third storyline in there about a cult that I didn't think was necessary at all. And as a fantasy reader, the world building for hell was somewhat lacking. There were quite a few logical things that I didn't think made sense. And really, it was this family story that I was the most engaged in. At the end, that was the part that was the most exciting. Like, I think for the guy in hell's story, like, you're already dead and in hell. Things can't really get much worse. You can get shipped down to the lower levels of hell. But like, whatever, then you work your way up again. You're never gonna die because you can't die in hell. So maybe it just felt like there were no stakes in that part of the story. Also the way that there just weren't enough connections. Like, it did connect in the end, but for the most part it was like reading two separate stories. So that did slow down the pace for most of the story. Then at the end, the family story got very exciting and I really enjoyed that part, but I think the rest of it around it made everything less thrilling than I would have liked it to be. So I did like this, but the only reason I picked it up is because I like the idea of a man having like a normal, boring corporate job in hell. And in the end, that's not even the part of the story that I liked. So if I'm putting these two books up against each other, I did enjoy them both, but I thought that The Many Lives of Laila Starr was just beautiful. It blew me away. Such a surprise. This is definitely the winner for the battle. So then our next battle is between a couple of fantasy novellas. We've got Magic Tides by Ilona up against Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse. So Magic Tides is a new novella in the Kate Daniels series, one of my most favorite series ever. The whole series is back here hiding away. So this novella is set after the main series when Kate and her love interest have moved out of town. They're trying to stay low profile. But then a kid gets kidnapped and Kate can't help but jump in to save them, kind of ruining the whole low profile thing they were trying to go for. But I was just so excited to be back with Kate and following along with another one of her adventures. It is quite a short story, but within that short story, it was just so fast-paced and action-packed, and there was so much to the mystery and the world building. Like, of course, Kate Daniels is a well-established series, but I love the way it incorporates mythology, and within this short novella we got so much more of this new town that they've moved to. I really hope we'll get more to the story after this, because it feels like they were setting up the potential for a lot more story with introducing us to a whole bunch of new characters. So if you're a Kate Daniels fan, you'll definitely be wanting to read this. Probably not the best place to start. if you haven't read Kate Daniels before, but it's a series I do recommend. I'm actually going to film a separate video about Magic Tides, spoiler-free review, but if you're interested in the Kate Daniels series, I will talk about why that series is worth getting into, and maybe also talk a little bit about why it might not be for everyone. I think that might actually manage to make it out before this video, so I'll put a link here or here if that's the case. Anyway, it was everything that I love about the Kate Daniels series, and I'm so happy that we got another story in that world. Then the other novella I read is Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is just a little standalone novella, and I'm honestly so disappointed about that because this was such an interesting world. In this world, we've got angels and demons. I think they're called the elect and the fallen. So as in Christian mythology, we've got the angels and the fallen who were once angels, but now they're more like demons, and they're looked down upon by the angel type people, except that this is a mining town where the fallen are able to detect divinity that they mine and then use to make all sorts of things. And there's certain features that the fallen have that makes it easy to identify them. However, we're following this girl who is half angel, half demon, and because of the luck of genetics, she's able to pass as an angel. However, her sister is not passing, and so she gets all the regular prejudice against the fallen. And in this story, her sister has been accused of murdering one of these fancy archangel type people, and her sister has to try and defend her. And I just thought the world was so interesting, but unfortunately there just wasn't enough world building in the story, not enough character development, and the investigation felt very basic and not very realistic, whereas compared to the Kate Daniels series, with that investigation felt like so realistic, as much as you can get in this weird kind of magical post-apocalyptic type world. Kate Daniels' investigation felt really fully developed, even though it was probably just as long as this book, whereas this one I just felt like it needed so much more. There was so much potential in it, but it just didn't quite deliver for me. I do still think it's worth a read for the world and the potential, but I would really like Rebecca Roanhorse to write like a longer story in this world and like flesh things out a little bit more. Although, let's not say that, because what I really want Rebecca Roanhorse to be doing is finishing her 6 world series. So I'd prioritize that over this. But anyway, if I'm putting these two novellas up against each other, I'm going to pick Magic Tides as the winner because Kate Daniels is the best. Okay, then our last fantasy battle is between a couple of whimsical stories. So we've got A Storm of Sisters by Michelle Harrison up against Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. So, A Storm of Sisters is the 4th book in the Pinch of Magic series, where we follow the Widdershins sisters, 3 sisters who have inherited these magical artifacts and live in this world that's somewhat magical. There's ghosts and witchy stuff, and I just really love the whimsical vibe. These books are so much fun. I love the sister dynamics, and I always think the mysteries in these are pretty clever. In this one, their dad's cousin, I think, who's kind of this crotchety old lady, has slipped and fallen and broken her ankle, and so the girls and their grandmother go to this snowy middle of nowhere town to try and look after this woman. While they're there, they end up staying in this hotel. There's a winter festival, but also a strange ghost mystery, all based around this legend of this crystal ball. As I said, I just think these ones are really smart. And even though I started this and I didn't think I was in the mood for middle grade, in the end I ended up having a lot of fun with it. And I'm actually really hoping we'll get more books in this series. I'm not sure if that's the plan, but the way these books read, it could go on forever with the Widdershins sisters having adventures. Then we've got Tress of the Emerald Sea. This is the first of Brandon Sanderson's Secret Project books. Unfortunately, I haven't received my copy yet, which I'm really sad about because I think the art in it is going to be absolutely beautiful. So this story was inspired by Brandon Sanderson sitting down with his family to watch the Princess Bride movie. Princess Bride movie was one of my most favorites when I was a kid. But afterwards his wife commented that she wished Buttercup had been like a little bit more proactive instead of just sitting around waiting to be saved, had gone out and done things for herself. So Brandon Sanderson's written this story about Tress, who lives on this middle of nowhere rock in the middle of the ocean, and she ends up having to go on a quest to save the love of her life. Now, in typical Brandon Sanderson style, the best thing about this is the magic system. The ocean is made up of these spores, and there's different kinds of spores, but the spores around Tress's rock, when they get wet, they grow big plants out of them. So of course this is very dangerous because if you happen to like accidentally swallow one, you're in a lot of trouble. But there are also some really cool things that they can do with the spores, and I really hope one day we'll get a darker or more adult kind of story set in this world, because unfortunately Tress of the Emerald Sea is written in a really whimsical way. I say unfortunately because I just think the writing style and the humour weren't my favourite, but it also wasn't terrible. I do think just the humour isn't going to sit with everyone. I didn't find it as funny as I think it found itself. And as well, one thing that Brandon Sanderson's often really good at is his plots and having amazing twists at the end. The twist at the end of this was like, fine. Maybe if it wasn't Brandon Sanderson, I would have been impressed, but it's Brandon Sanderson, so I think he could have done better. That's not really the kind of story he was trying to write. He was just trying to write like a fun, whimsical story for his wife. And that's fine, and I did enjoy it, but I just think the ending wasn't everything I would have liked it to be. As well, Tress spends a lot of time with this pirate crew, and I didn't really enjoy them. I do actually have a whole separate review, which I'll link down below or up here somewhere if you want to go and watch that. And I got into a lot more of my thoughts there, but just like, it was good, and I'm looking forward to having my physical copy, but overall it also wasn't quite everything I was hoping for. So if we are putting these two books up against each other, I'm actually going to pick A Storm of Sisters by Michelle Harrison, because this was more than I was expecting, and I just had so much fun with this. I thought all the characters were much more well developed. I thought the mystery was a lot more clever, even though as an adult I could see some of the things coming, because I'm, you know, this is a middle grade book and I like to believe that I'm smarter than a middle grade person, although that's possibly not always true. But anyway, I had a lot of fun with this. So this will be moving on to the next round. Okay, then our next battle is our horror thriller battle. So we've got The Boatman's Daughter by Andy Davidson up against In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. So firstly, The Boatman's Daughter. This is a very strange story. We're mainly following this young woman who is looking after this strange boy, and she's also involved in some kind of drug smuggling business, but things are not going well. And really these young people are having to deal with the violence and the witchcraft that the older generation have started. It's a very dark story, but also it's written in this very atmospheric and fantastical kind of way. And there are supernatural elements to some degree, although just the way it was written, I never felt like I knew what was real. It's written in this fantastical way, but it's also very raw and gritty and real. And I don't know how I felt about those two things being put together. I just found it very hard to know what was really happening and also to remember who all the characters were, which might be partially my own fault, but it did mean I found it hard to connect with the story. But then I also read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, and this is another one where I struggled to connect with the story, but in this one it was because the characters were all such awful people. In this one we're following this woman who's going back to her college reunion, and she's very determined to show everybody how successful she is. And I just could not connect to how self-absorbed she was and like how worried she was about what other people thought about her. And then while they're at their reunion, all these secrets start to come out about their friend who was murdered while they were at college. But the thing was, I just hated every single character, so I didn't care if they all died. I didn't care about anything that happened to them. I think if you could connect with these characters, the story was probably okay. I've seen a lot of really good reviews for this, which is why I picked it up, but mainly I came out of it just wondering, like, is that really what American colleges are like? Are people really like that? That's awful. Anyway, if I'm putting these two books up against each other, it's actually hard because, as I said, I didn't really connect with either of these stories. I think maybe the plot and like the writing style were a lot better in My Dreams I Hold a Knife, but The Boatman's Daughter like was much more atmospheric, and like I think the themes were a lot stronger, even though it's hard to talk about them with any kind of concreteness because of my lack of understanding of what was really happening a lot of the time. So honestly, I don't think I could recommend either of these books. So does it really matter who wins this battle? You know what? That's not true. I could recommend these books because I think if you don't mind really shallow, stupid characters, I'd probably recommend In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, maybe? But also if you really like horror and like very atmospheric writing, then maybe you'd like The Boatman's Daughter. But neither of them were really for me. I guess I have to pick one. So I'm going to go with In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, just because I did find it easier to get through this one. That's a valid reason, right? Then for our final battle, let's say these books are about life lessons. We've got This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub up against Be a Triangle by Lilly Singh. So This Time Tomorrow is a time travel book. This woman goes to sleep after her 40th birthday and wakes up, and it's her 16th birthday, and she has to decide whether she wants to try and change anything. The thing with this book is that it spends at least 50% of the book before we even get to any of the time travel element, just expressing how shitty her life is and how kind of miserable she is, or like unsure about whether the life she has is the life she wants. And then when it finally does get to the time travel, it does very little with it, and then suddenly she's learned a big lesson about valuing your life, no matter what it is. And I just didn't feel like that lesson was even fully taught, and it didn't really do anything with the time travel. And really, this book is focused on the relationship with your parents and like illness and death of your parents, and that's not necessarily a topic that I want to read about. But if it's a topic that you want to read or that you want to avoid, then that's what this book's actually about. But if you like time travel books, this is not really a great one. And I picked this up because it was on a list of like top science fiction books that have been released in the last few years. And honestly, really? Because there are definitely better science fiction books that have been released in the last few years. Definitely. Then we have Be a Triangle, which is by Lilly Singh, who's some kind of celebrity, but I've never heard of her. It was recommended by some booktuber that I've forgotten now. And I did enjoy it. Like throughout the book, it has some really fun graphics, like her living her life and little diagrams. I like the pictures. I like the writing style. But just for a self-help book, it was rather lacking in evidence and any kind of concrete advice. Like generally it was saying you should meditate. It kind of had a good message and some good ideas, but really it's just the celebrity who barely has their life together telling you about how to get your life together. And it was a fun read, but as far as a self-help book, not really that helpful. Still, if I'm putting it up against This Time Tomorrow, to be honest, I had more fun reading this, which I think says more about This Time Tomorrow than it does about this book. But anyway, this book is going to win the battle. So now we're up to the semi-finals. We're going to start with all our fantasy books. So we've got The Many Lives of Laila Starr by Ramvi and Filipe Andrade up against Magic Tides by Ilona Andrews and A Storm of Sisters by Michelle Harrison. So I think these three books are actually my most favorite books of the month, so that makes this battle difficult. I think firstly we'll take off A Storm of Sisters. I really liked it, but it is just a fun middle grade. It's nothing too mind-blowing. Then we've got Magic Tides and The Many Deaths of Laila Starr. I bet sometimes I've said The Many Lives of Laila Starr. I keep calling it the wrong thing. Anyway, both of these I really loved. They both have like great mythological inspiration in them. They both have really great characters. I felt emotionally connected to both of them. The writing in The Many Deaths of Laila Starr was probably better because the writing in Kate Daniels can be very matter-of-fact and straightforward. However, I love the characters in Magic Tides so much just because I love the Kate Daniels series. Wow, that's hard. But also, like Magic Tides, I was gonna say just now, like The Many Deaths of Laila Starr is just a short comic thing, so there's not as much substance to it, but Magic Tides is only a novella. But admittedly, it does have the whole Kate Daniels series to build upon. So it has a very solid foundation. I love both of these, but I think I'm going to pick Magic Tides just because I love Kate Daniels. And I think maybe the plot was a little bit more complex and I liked that complexity. And there's a lot of things in The Many Deaths of Laila Starr that are kind of purposefully left vague, whereas everything is so well described in Magic Tides. So I'm going to pick Magic Tides as the best fantasy book I read this month. It probably shouldn't be a surprise. Then let's work out what other book's going to go up against it, even though will it really have a chance? Probably not. So we've got In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead up against Be a Triangle by Lilly Singh. As I said, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, the characters just annoyed me a lot. So I think I'm actually going to pick Be a Triangle, even though I thought this was lacking substance. It still was really an enjoyable read, which In My Dreams I Hold a Knife definitely was not. So, Be a Triangle is going to win this round. And so for the final, we're going to have Magic Tides by Ilona Andrews up against Be a Triangle by Lilly Singh. There's no point even talking about it because obviously Magic Tides wins. So Magic Tides is the best book of the month. To be honest, it was also my most anticipated release of the month, so this really shouldn't be a surprise. If you have read any of the books I talked about in this video, I would love to talk with you about them down in the comments and let me know what the best book you read in January was. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well and I will see you next time.